Do you hate not having the ability to play old PlayStation games on your PlayStation 4?
Yes, I do.
Well, there's a fix for it apparently coming in the PlayStation 5.
Hot take.
Now, let's be fair, there is the ability to play PlayStation 2 games on the PlayStation 4, at least a handful, and you can use PlayStation Now to play an assortment of other games, but that's really just streaming games. It's not actually downloading them on the console and playing it. And look, it's not all very simple. There's some games that have been modified, other games that haven't been. I just got Ace Combat 5, and Ace Combat 5 is a PlayStation 2 game, but it doesn't look like a PlayStation 2 game anymore, and it's clearly been upgraded. Nobody knows what's going on. It's not simple. It's not like it used to be, but apparently things are going to get better with the PlayStation 5.
Yes, there was a patent that was authored in 2016, and this patent had a certain gentleman authoring it, one of a few people, and this was Mark Cerny. Mark Cerny, of course, is responsible for the architecture that is currently inside of the PS4.
Yeah.
He was the lead designer of the PS4. He's been in the video game world for a long time.
Oh yeah, Marble Madness?
Marble Madness,
Yeah.
Knack.
Yeah, Knack.
Do you remember Knack?
Knack, that's a great game, maybe.
Anywho, this patent was authored that's basically making it so that new hardware, not necessarily the PlayStation 4 hardware, I don't think it is, new hardware is going to be able to replicate legacy hardware on the processor side of things.
Yes. Now, this is exciting because basically what this means is, and I know a lot of people are probably thinking this, that, oh, you're going to be able to play your old games on the PlayStation 5, which is what we're seeing here. However, you're probably, like, we've been thinking about a lot about this, and we have discussions to go for years on this, but we don't believe you're going to get the optical ability. That means you won't be able to take PlayStation original discs or PlayStation 2 and play them on the PlayStation 5. We believe what they're trying to do here is a digital front idea. So, you have a digital copy of the game and you can play it. But in the past, what they've been doing, especially with the PlayStation 4, is modifying the game's older code to kind of work in a different way. Like I said, with Ace Combat 5, it literally doesn't look like the same game. It very much feels like kind of an upgraded version of the original with a bunch of modifications to its visual settings and stuff like that. So what we're seeing now, from what we can understand from this patent that we've seen, is that it's just going to be giving you the original game running, and just that's it. You don't have a self-contained package of a game running or anything like that.
So basically what's going to be happening is that you're going to be running these games on a system, and what this patent is for is so that when this game runs or an application runs, it speaks with the CPU and says, hey, I'm a PlayStation 2 game, I'm looking for PlayStation 2 hardware, and then the hardware of the PS5 would recognize this, and it would spoof the internals of a PlayStation 2 and say, oh, I'm not a PlayStation 5, I'm a PlayStation 2. It's cool. And then supposedly, I guess, the beefy hardware itself would be able to emulate the system and properly play that game.
Yeah,
so
that's basically what we're looking at. It's a very simple idea.
The system is lying to the games, I guess.
That's it.
Basically.
Now, the reason why you need that is because if you don't establish something like that through emulation, you have to kind of emulate every tiny little problem that might happen. Oh, I want to save to a memory card. Where's the memory card? That kind of stuff. Now, we've seen emulation happen in the past with a bunch of different Sony systems, and this seems to be kind of in the same idea, but there are some other things that are at play here that might make it even better on the PlayStation 5 than it's been in the past with other PlayStation systems.
Yeah, well, because in the past with other systems, we've seen emulation. Like we said, like the PS4 was the first time that we didn't really have backwards compatibility in some form factor.
Not in the same way.
Yeah, because
exactly.
the PlayStation console history has been weird, right? Because now we have an infrastructure in the consoles that's more like a regular computer, right?
That's true.
The x86 sort of tech working,
Or,
which will make things easier going forward.
Basically, consoles now are more like PCs than they've ever been in the past.
Yeah, but previously we had things like the cell microprocessor, the emotion engine and stuff that we had to deal with, and emulation with previous consoles oftentimes integrated like physically the components necessary to emulate those things. Like the PS2 was a little finicky, as well as the PS3.
Yes.
So now it's all going to be like, we don't want to say this is FPGA, like system on a chip, but it kind of sort of sounds like that.
From what we're looking at, it kind of seems to be more in that realm where they're not having anything that that's affecting the overall performance. But here's the cool thing. As we've seen with FPGA systems in the past, and actually with emulation in general, we've seen re-renderings of games where you could actually alter the resolution of the game so that you could get it to be a little bit sharper on screen. But there are some cool ideas at play that I honestly don't think we've seen from a manufacturer. So there is this idea that Sony is going to be implementing an artificial intelligence kind of processing development thing to make the games look better on your TV.
Yeah, this is one of those, like, this patent, the patent's there, so that we can kind of see this tech maybe appearing. I think what you're talking about has been more of a rumor, but we have seen the tech working. Like, we did see a fan-made version of this sort of tech.
Yes.
Roughly, you guys can look this up. It's a Final Fantasy VII. They made some sort of AI program in which they can calculate what a better render of backgrounds would be, and then it just kind of smooths things out and kind of fills in the information. So are we assuming that this is something that could possibly be implemented with like older graphics moving forward onto like a PS5? Or?
See, this is what I think they're going to go for. Now, when it comes to the original Xbox, we're going to we're not going so far back. Xbox is still PlayStation 2 era, so it's not like drastically old. You're running off of pretty big games. Most of the games on that platform were utilizing 3D graphics. Some were 2D based. It just really depended on what you're looking at. But with the Xbox, Xbox 360, and Xbox One, and onto the Xbox One X, we've actually seen older video games being run on the newer hardware that are running better than they did on the older hardware. And it's basically just because older games might have had a little bit of a limitation here and there, and all they're doing is they're basically giving you this raw performance that can make that game run a little bit better. They can upgrade the resolutions. The best way to play Red Dead Redemption, the original one, is on the Xbox One X, bar none. No arguments. I don't want to hear anything about it. The game looks amazing on 4K resolution, and it really plays well. So what Sony is apparently trying to do, and this is the rumor, and it makes a lot more sense when we're hearing about this backwards compatibility stuff, is that if you were to take an original PlayStation 1 game and bump the resolution on that, well, there is an issue. Final Fantasy VII is a great example of this because you have these really cool
pre-rendered backgrounds,
but then you also have these kind of tiny little 3D models that don't kind of blend in. And even with the fan work that we've seen where they're redoing the backgrounds completely with this this technique, it's actually like you'll see the snap in when the video starts, right? And if they were to do this properly, they could probably get rid of all of that by doing some kind of new technique.
Yeah, absolutely. So whereas you were talking about the Xbox, like Xbox One backwards compatibility, whereas it feels like they're taking older games and they have to be very specific about how they rework them for the console, and it's a very slow sort of turnout of these classic titles.
Yeah, you're not seeing these happen every single day.
Yeah, so this the implementation of this tech could mean that it'd be much easier, and that you could have like waves of games released fairly simplistically, I guess.
I guess that'd be the way to go.
Instead of having to like specify specific things, because it feels like each of those needs to be reworked for the Xbox One specifically.
Yeah, so basically what we've seen a little bit, and this changes from system to system, so this isn't the same case study for everyone, but there are examples of a single game being sold, and that game is a bundle experience that actually has the emulator and everything pre-configured into one package. So that takes up a lot of space, that takes up, you don't have like a configurable thing that works with multiple games. So what you would do is you would make your emulation core, or your core for that one system, and then from there you can introduce a bunch of games, and just it basically gets treated the way it used to in the past. So any kind of modifications or adjustments you do, filters or any kind of extended abilities, you can extend that through every single game in the library rather than having to reproduce the same thing every single game.
Yeah, it's really neat, and I believe that this is coming at a point. Hopefully, Sony has seen the writing on the wall. The Xbox One seems to be selling better, much better, because of the backwards compatibility options. We're seeing that legacy systems have even more of a, like, everyone's always loved playing older games, but recently classic systems, bundled games like the SNK collection, the Mega Man collection, the Genesis collection. Like, legacy software, I feel like is even more prominent today than it ever was. So for a next-gen console, this is definitely a huge selling point for a lot of people, especially... I'm so sorry. I just keep going. Especially after the disaster, and we won't forget this, that was the PlayStation 1 Classic.
Yeah, that is a pretty bad system. I think everybody...
You got to make up for it, man.
This is the way to make up for it.
Give us good emulation. So, okay, we know that they have this patent for this sort of tech. I think you did touch on this very briefly, but the chances of us being able to take our games off of our shelves or PS1 games and putting them into a PS5, not that good.
Okay.
Right? Like we're not going to be able to read our old discs and stuff.
If they're okay, let me make this clear.
Okay.
I have an idea for how this works out. I believe that the next PlayStation console may have a variation, but I do believe it's going to have a Blu-ray player on it, a Blu-ray disc drive.
Yeah, I don't see us going discless anytime soon.
Not that quick. So why I think it's going to work out this way makes sense to me. Maybe the next one is just a Blu-ray disc drive, not a DVD drive, nothing else but Blu-ray disc. If that's the case, it will have the ability to run PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, and PlayStation 5. Now, we've talked about this a lot. There is no way that the PlayStation 5 doesn't run PlayStation 4 games. If that happens, it's game over. Sony's out for the count. They don't come back from that. That would be the worst move they could possibly make.
One of the heads of Digital Foundry just recently was tweeting about this, actually, and he said, no, 100%.
Yeah.
I know that it will be PS4 backwards compatible. It sounds like it is what it is.
Just think about this. We know the PlayStation 5 is likely going to be something that is more powerful than the PlayStation 4 Pro. And because the PlayStation 4 Pro is a 4K system, realistically, any of the games that are on that platform right now that can utilize PlayStation 4 abilities, they're just going to look like amazing games on the PlayStation 5.
Yep.
So there's going to be a whole bunch of gamers out there that didn't get a PlayStation 4 Pro, they get the PlayStation 5, and they're like, wow, all of these games run at better frame rates, higher resolutions, look better, play better. This is awesome. So the PlayStation 5 might actually introduce like a nice way for people to see a much better system. The Xbox One X is kind of the closest thing we have to that right now, where it is a massive jump over the Xbox One S. So we start to see this amazing like changeover from playing one game on one platform to the other, to the point that if you play a game on Xbox One S or Xbox One Original, and it's usually lower quality in the PlayStation 4 version, usually that's how it plays out. When you go to play it on Xbox One X, you get a so much better version than anything else on the market, typically. So what we're dealing with here is basically a whole bunch of consumers out there that are going to get a brand new system, and their entire back catalog of games is going to be playing better on that system, which is typically not how it works.
Yeah. So, okay, you believe? Are you saying you're saying you believe that we'll be able to take our disc copies of PS4 games at least,
yes,
insert them into the
at the very least?
Yeah, I don't believe that we'll be getting that physical backwards compatibility with. Maybe with PS3, but not PS2 and PS1.
I don't think PS2 and PS1.
Because we're entering a realm of video gaming nowadays, in that we're getting these various services and storefronts, and it feels like it's not within Sony's best. You know, they can make money off of selling PS1 and PS2 games on their online services, and that's very much what I see happening in the future.
That's what I agree too. I mean, I think that's how they're thinking about it.
Yeah.
Now, look at the comments right now. There's a whole bunch of people saying that PlayStation 3 games, some of them are on DVD discs. I'm aware of that. It's just those ones won't work. I think that the cost factor of that stuff might actually be putting people against that. I believe that Sony is going to try and support as much Blu-ray as they can, as many Blu-ray games they can, including PlayStation 3. And the big reason for that happening is simply because they didn't support PlayStation 3 onto the PlayStation 4 because of technical reasons.
Right.
With the new PlayStation 5, a much more powerful hardware, they're probably capable of running cell process-based games a lot easier than they could in the past. But it's not just that, it's getting the games to run at higher resolutions, which I think the PlayStation 5 would be more than capable of doing as well.
So we're going to be able to take some of our old games from our libraries and play them on this system. Do you see this sort of backwards compatibility approach? It seems like it's all encompassing from the patent that's here. Do you see that biting into Sony's other service, PlayStation Now? Because PlayStation Now, they were trying to make that.
PlayStation Now went away a lot. It was on a whole bunch of different platforms. They started pulling it back. I don't think they see a future in that because there's a reason. There's a reason.
Yeah, go ahead.
On Netflix, if you were to stream out a movie, that movie is sitting somewhere on a server and everyone gets streamed the exact same movie. For a video game, it's not the same thing. Video games are changing from player to player, so it's not the same data being sent out, and that game has to be rendered at a farm, and there's a lot of things rendering farm, not an actual farm with pigs and animals and stuff. there is a lot going on there that can really modify the way, not modify, but extend the cost of making that appropriate and work. So while I do think it's a way to do it with maybe older games, newer games that require too much processor-intensive stuff is just, it's crazy. It's not a good idea.
And maybe they would see, I don't know what sort of, I don't know how much money they're making off of the PlayStation Now service and how that would compare to possibly selling older games piecemeal.
Yeah, well,
so
I mean,
there could be more profits there. Piecemeal selling PS1 games, PS2 games, PS3 games.
I think selling individual games makes a lot more sense.
Like, I like that better
Yeah.
than just streaming games, because I've had nothing but problematic experiences with streaming
Well, look
services.
what Microsoft did with Xbox Game Pass,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You get all of these games per month that change out every month. But what's awesome about it is you're paying per month for it, but you get a whole bunch of games that you download directly to your system that you can play. That's the way Sony should be doing it. And if Sony is anything, and this isn't to insult them, they are the greatest at taking other people's ideas and sometimes making them better, usually.
Okay.
PlayStation Classic isn't a great example of that.
Super quick, now that you mentioned other people's ideas, and I think we did want to talk about this, do you think that Sony having this sort of approach with this patent where the media has to contact the processor, let's say, and then the processor says, I'm this system, do you think it could go beyond PlayStation 1, 2, 3
100%.
to
There's no way
the
that
Neo
they're doing
Geo.
this. Yes. Okay, because think about this. Like we just said, this is all based on the theory of the concept of having this amazing graphics technique that improves older video games.
Yes.
You're telling me, now we know, actually, we don't know for certain, but we are pretty sure that they're not going to get any Nintendo games. We're just there.
Yeah, I'm going to say that's probably
There may actually be some Sony ImageSoft games that they can take from way back in the day, but I don't believe you're going to be seeing, like, Super Mario Brothers and stuff. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But if they do have this really cool technique to make older games look a lot better by redrawing the sprites, we've seen this kind of stuff with emulators before where they kind of blend the pixels together and make things look a little bit rounded. They might have a better technique that does that, which is what we assume they're doing. If they do something like that, we're talking Sega Genesis, Sega CD, Sega Saturn, Neo Geo, any of those systems that have much older graphics techniques or graphics designs could be improved upon that and made to look a lot better.
Some of these games that we're discussing right now are offered piecemeal here or there on many different services, but what we're talking about here is emulation that is fairly accurate. That's what I'm really looking for out of all of this. If nothing else, I just want emulation that can be play things smoothly, possibly maybe get some anti-aliasing on some of those older janky looking PS1 games and things like that, just to improve the experience and maybe have some options in there so that you can sort of tweak things to your own specifications.
That's what I think.
Right.
And a really good use of this technology would be for PSP and PlayStation Vita games. See, just think about this.
Oh my gosh.
With the PlayStation 5, I believe we're going to see kind of an improvement over the controller. The first time we saw a major revision of the controller for the PlayStation brand, and I mean major in like they did not look the same, it was the PlayStation 3 to the PlayStation 4. The controller visually is a lot different.
What about the boomerang for the PlayStation 3?
We don't remember that. So this is the thing with the PlayStation 5 controller. Because I think there might be some attachment to doing VR games and stuff like that, they might actually put more VR techniques into the controller itself so they have one concise controller that works across all their platforms. But that would also mean that they can introduce a couple of extra buttons or features to support playing emulated games from the past so that you have just basically more buttons. But that's the thing with emulation. Every controller is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a little bit wildly crazy depending on what you're getting there. So the more buttons they can add, the more features they can add, usually the better it is. So with that in mind, what I do believe you're going to see is just some of those older games that are going to be coming in that are a lot easier to play on the system. Because if they have just a core that's a Sega Genesis, now we already have Sega Genesis games being emulated left and right, that happens a lot. But with a core, get a game, get another game, build another game, have a collection of digital games you can use, and those games look better than on any other platform because of a proprietary Sony technique that makes the games just look better. And by the way, the original IP owners and the original developers don't have to touch the game. It just looks better just because.
Right, and they just get money.
Oh, I mean...
Just give us your IP and we'll be selling these games.
Sony can literally go to developers and go, hey... We're going to make a remaster for you in 2 seconds, and you don't have to touch anything. Just sit back and take the money.
It kind of reminds me of when Nintendo went to all the all of the older sort of developers and whatnot back in the one tier,
Yeah.
the Wii Shop days, because they were like, no, just give us your games, and then you get money, and everyone's happy. And that was a very cool ecosystem that they had there for a while. Maybe we can have the same sort of, tree branch of classic consoles and classic games that right at our fingertips.
And another thing to keep in mind as well, to make Sony's whole concept here probably work a little bit better, when you're taking older video games and you're upscaling them, and this is something that we've talked about in the past, the older video games we have don't really like with the old pixels and stuff, don't really upscale to 1080p that well because it's not a perfect representation of the pixel ratio, right? 720p is. That's why you see a lot of 720p based retro video game systems nowadays and not
SNES,
1080.
NES Classic.
You can do it. There are ways to do it, but it's a lot easier just to do 720p. But 4K is exactly that ratio. Right. So what you might be getting, and the reason why Sony really wants to do this as well, and why they might be getting into this and talking about all this, is that a lot of those older games will look better at 4K than they would at 1080p. And when you've got such a powerful system that can do that kind of stuff, suddenly, and look, let's be fair, some of those old games running at 4K gonna look real messy. So they do have to create a technique to make them look a little bit better, and this is, I think, the way that they do it. It makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would expect from something like this? Again, this patent, it's still pending.
Yes.
It was authored in 2016, and just recently it's been dug up, and people have been talking about it. So we don't know whether or not this is going to be implemented. Grain of salt, as usual, per se, but it would be exciting to see this implemented into the next gen of hardware.
I think there's one thing that I believe is so very important to make this work. If Sony really wants to hit this hard, they have to do one special thing. Digital rights management held to the consumer's account, whatever it might be. This is important. Let's say there's a PlayStation 8, a PlayStation 9, you just keep making PlayStation consoles, whatever. The ability to take that game you've purchased and hold in your digital library so that the next system that comes out, you can take those purchases with you forward is a huge, huge issue.
We have seen an implementation of their store system in that we could carry over a lot of those games so far. It's been a little messy here or there, but much better than some of the competitors.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I agree with you 100%.
I think it's important. For anyone out there that's ever upgraded a cell phone, that has gone from one Windows computer to another Windows computer or one Mac to another Mac, your purchases move with you. You take them if you have a digital storefront. Steam is great at this. I've had multiple computers. I've only had one Steam account. GOG.com, I can download packages of those games that I can install whenever I want, even if their servers go down. Sony needs to invent or create some kind of method for that for console gamers to be more comfortable with, and that will also make developers a lot more comfortable with actually having packages like that. If Sony can implement this and basically create a physical idea for ownership of games with digital properties, this could be a game changer for them. But they have to do that, because if they don't, Microsoft is going to do it first, and if they do it, then they're going to be winning. So it really matters that whoever does this first
Nintendo could be doing it. They're making their gaming enthusiast program.
That could be it.
Whatever this other system's going to be.
Whichever of the three console companies do this first, they're going to win tons of money. Can you imagine walking into a store or getting any of the new systems and then the company tells you, oh, and these purchases are yours forever? They're like little MP3s. You buy an MP3, an M4A, whatever kind of digital video or audio format you have. Now those things are, when you get them from iTunes especially, are DRM free. So you download it, you have the file, you can do whatever you want with it. And consumers just like that. They don't require it, but they do want it. Well, and that's it. It's just such a great way to
We want perpetual media, know? That's why I am a collector of physical goods, but if there's a digital option that is fairly good, then absolutely.
You're making people care more about their digital purchases, and they feel more of a reward when they actually buy things, increasing the sales of the system dramatically and increasing the software sales, because I would be more happy to buy a specific game if I knew that, and then this is mine. I can put it to a USB stick and keep it in a box. And if if the world ends, I'll still have that box and that USB stick. Like, that's all that really matters, and that's what they gotta
Mario
do.
On a USB stick is my priority when the world
that's
is
the way
ended.
to do it.
Anyway, what do you guys think? Do you guys think that there's a lot to this patent? Do you think it'll be implemented within the next level of hardware?
Or do you think that Sony is not doing any of this stuff and we are reading way too much patent?
It's happening.
It's happening.